thank you all for coming to my exhibition. As it says on the slide, this is my final exhibition in Big Picture and of Year 12. And the topic I will be exhibiting today is the work I've done over the last 12 months in the general sort of area of student-led action for sustainability. So without further ado, on the agenda for today, but not exactly in this specific order, I'll be discussing my senior project, my thesis, my autobiography, my outlearning, also known as learning outside of the classroom, my leaving school project, which is just a document write-up of what avenues I plan to take post-graduation, and my digital portfolio, which is a curated website showcasing my best work. So I've broken it into two sections, and the first section is focused on my senior project. So this is the work I've done in the area of driving student action for sustainability at the school. So I'll start off by speaking about permaculture. I'll then speak about my senior project, and then my thesis, which is the presentation of that work in an academic piece of writing. So I've begun to speak about permaculture because it really sets the scene for what I'm going to talk about next. So I first connected with Aaron and the permaculture garden here early on last year. And at this point in time, over the last few months, I'd sort of reconnected with learning in a manner and made some positive changes to my life. But this last year was the first year when I was kind of reconnecting with formal education. And what was great about working in the permaculture garden was it gave me an opportunity to reconnect with nature like I had been when I was a kid. And it was also there that I built relationships founded in a mutual care for the earth, rather than, debaucherous activities or whatever. And these aren't relationships where founded in mutual care in the sense that we just talk about how we care for the earth, but we're actually putting these words into action and actually planting trees and such. So I've got a few photos. Here is me atop a pile of mulch, which is one of my favourite activities to do in the garden. And mulch is really great because what permaculture really aims to do is build atop less fertile, less nutrient-rich soil with nutrient-rich, fertile soil that plants will really want to thrive in. And this will become relevant later on in this presentation. So here's Aaron after clearing out the compost area. Here's me. And here is the formula for our no-dig garden bed, which so instead of planting produce into the ground, we plant it atop the ground. And to someone who doesn't know what it is, what it looks like is just an elongated mound of straw with lettuce and such planted in it. But what it actually is a lasagna of these nutrient-rich ingredients. I won't go into it too much but it ranges from rock dust, lucerne, chamomile, compost, and our magic potion, which has water, clay, that sort of thing in it. And again, this is all about bringing nutrients into the garden and building up layers of fertile, healthy soil. And here is an aerial view of the garden taken a few months ago by a drone. And it's even looking much better now, but it was still looking pretty good then. And what I'll speak about soon is these two wheelie bins just here. So it was this garden where I found the inspiration for my senior project. And at this don't get too distracted by the slide just yet, but at this point in time, I've just done my third year 11 project, and what this was, so I built a kit for a machine that turns, it's called a pultrusion machine, and it turns plastic bottles into 3D printed filament. This works by manually cutting it into a strip that you then feed through a nozzle, and it gets pulled and wound around a spool into a filament. And what I was actually doing was I was attempting to analyze to what degree is this actually sustainable. To what, is it really better for me to recycle plastic bottles and get some crap quality filament than it is to exchange a bottle for 10 cents at a return and earn station? And so it was looking at the sort of general sustainability of that and taking a bit of a critical lens to it. And the reason I didn't get quite as far with that as I would have liked to is because the literature I had to read relating to that was like highly academic chemistry literature, and like I haven't really, I don't like know that much about chemistry, like beyond like year 9 chemistry. So I couldn't quite get as far with it as I would have liked to. But before kind of analysing that aspect, my idea was to build what's called an extrusion machine, which is a typical method of 3D printing filament creation, whereby plastic pellets are filtered through a hopper and wound into a filament that can be 3D printed with. And my idea was to organise beach cleanups, seek funding, and set up a recycling workshop at the school featuring one of these machines that looks something like this, and to create things from the plastic waste. And the issues with this were that weathered beach plastic is of poor quality, and this kind of leads into the highly ambitious aspect of it, which is that to gain a deep understanding of, one of the aspects, why weathered beach plastic isn't usable for this. You need to pick up all this background knowledge to kind of understand that one piece among many other pieces. So, and then as well as that, my kind of hypothesis that I didn't quite prove with my previous project was that a small-scale recycling initiative will tend to fare worse than a large-scale one. And that's in terms of how sustainable it is, although I was going to make the argument for small-scale initiatives being able to drive community action, and also that these small experiments are what can kind of find the answers for how we'll build these bigger and more efficient machines. So with that in mind, I pivoted to an idea inspired by Craig Rewcastle's hit series, The War on Waste. And the idea was more broadly focused on community action. So the idea was to explore the waste management system at 5 Islands, implement solutions to identify problems, and then as well as that, the goal was to engage students with these initiatives and this data collection and longitudinally track the cohort's perception. And in terms of my thesis, I wasn't quite sure what this would lead to just yet, which I will get to when I get up to that, but this was kind of the data I was gathering, and then now I'm kind of extrapolating it, I guess, into piece of research in the context of other people's research. So, I began this by auditing the school's waste. And before I could do that, what really helped me was to map out the bins around the school. So I went around, I took note of every bin, I noted the size, and for the indoor ones, I noted if they were on the top floor or the bottom floor, and I noted what type they were. And this allowed me to find that pretty much all of the bins at our school are mixed waste. They get deposited into a 2,000-ish litre landfill dumpster right here near the basketball court. There's only a few recycling bins just here in that direction that get recycled. And the reason that is because this section right here is on the bottom floor, it's administration, and on the top floor, it's big picture. So you can imagine if mainstream students are occupying all of this space, it would be a lot harder to have a system of both mixed waste and recycling. But you know, big picture and administration members of the school just pretty much stationary in this region throughout the day. It would make sense to have a recycling bin in each big picture classroom and in the office where a lot of paper is used. So a bit of paper and cardboard is recycled. I'm not sure how much, but I think the cleaner, Shane, may have told me it's about, by approximate volume, not the technical actual water displacement volume, I think it's about a wheelie bin or two a week, which is not much compared to what we were about to find goes to landfill. So with this in mind, the goal now became to audit our landfill headed waste and work out how much is thrown away per X amount of time and what the composition of that waste stream was. So, firstly, can you guess how long it takes our school to, perhaps Virginia, would you like to guess? How long it takes our school to throw away that? A school of 300 students, how long it takes us to throw away that much rubbish?
In terms of how long to fill it up, or
collect that amount.
Oh, yeah. 2 weeks.
You're kind of a bit off there. 2 days. A school of 300 students. So we only had 4 wheelie bins, but that is 5 240 litre wheelie bins, or 1,200 litres worth of rubbish. And it seems startling, but if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, let's imagine a typical 5-person household throws away one of those a week, and they're there 75% of the time. So it adds up, but it's still startling. So anyway, here's myself and my gorgeous peers auditing the waste, because I had a lot of help doing this. And our findings were that of I think it's 62 kilograms, it's 30 kilograms of waste going to landfill a day, I think it is. And of that, 15 kilograms, or half, 50% is compostable, and only about a third is actually meant to be going to landfill, with the remainder being recyclable. And I do have to preface this with saying that in this compostable category, we did include some things that many people would not deem to be compostable. This includes paper towels, you're not, so I'm just explaining the findings of a waste audit, and we found that half of our landfill-headed waste is compostable, and whilst you can compost that stuff, it may not be the best stuff to compost. So that included some soiled cardboard, which you wouldn't recycle. So then we decided we could deem that as compostable, and it did include paper towels and cardboard-based food packaging, which may contain PFAS and such things. But I will get to a bit later why that still is a fairly accurate finding. And whilst we, mainly the weighted, the weight of the waste we audited was the most empirical, it was helpful to also note the containerized volume of the rubbish. So that's the 5 wheelie bins. Now that's not the actual volume by water displacement, that's just the containerized volume. And why that's useful is I was able to extrapolate that and find that in a typical school year, we throw away 75,000 litres worth of space of rubbish. And some simple maths, I know you haven't all seen a school hall, but if you just imagine a school hall, simple maths allow me to find that that's enough waste. If you tipped out a year's worth of our waste and spread it out, that's enough rubbish to fill the floor of the school hall up to knee height. And that's why that's a useful metric, if you can imagine. And the other category that was not recorded by weight, but that was recorded by count, was drink containers. And we found that 45.5 drink containers are being thrown away every day by our school, which amounts to 4-day school week, 40 school weeks in a year is $728 of expended potential income per annum. Now that doesn't just sound like much, but think about it like this. If each of the 300 students kept their $2 worth a year, it's not worth much. But if I decide to keep mine and my friends decide to keep theirs and their friends decide to keep theirs, and we all decide that we want to put it towards a new basketball hoop or new trees for the garden, then it's actually got some value. And I do have a hunch that in terms of permaculture garden funding, that's actually a fairly substantial amount. And furthermore, as part of the longitudinal tracking of student engagement and perceptions, I distributed a survey regarding that and found that 95% of students amongst the big picture cohort strongly believe that we need to change our waste management practices. So with this in mind, this was essentially the cornerstone and it laid the foundation for the initiatives that were to come next. So I wrote up a report of the audit, and of course I was planning to implement the recommendations myself, but I had a list of recommendations, and there were 2 recommendations, or 3, but I won't focus on one, that I decided would be what I would want to work on, and that was to collect drink containers and compost our organic waste. And I decided that the drink containers was of priority because A, survey respondents showed strong interest in such an initiative as per their survey, and B, it had potential to generate funds for the subsequent initiatives. And not only that, but if the students are really engaged in this, then perhaps it will set the scene for them to be engaged in what's to come next. Hi, Tim.
Sorry, I just had to do school drop-off on Monday morning. Sorry, Isha.
That's all good. Again, like with the recycling bins in big picture classrooms, container collection bins also make sense here, but not really in the mainstream faction of the school. But some simple calculation allowed me to find that a big picture wide drink container initiative, as per the findings of audit, could accumulate 1,000 drink containers or $100 in just 10 weeks or a school term. So again, that could actually be utilized for something substantial. I began the, what I'll start off by saying is there is and was already a drink container collection initiative in big picture. So just down the hall, there's a kitchenette, and by kitchenette, I don't mean a communal space or a kitchen, I mean an inlet in the wall with a fridge, a sink, and a microwave. And residing there is this collection tub of drink containers and it's been there for 4 years, and I was able to photocopy the receipts of this initiative. And compared to the $4.50 that's thrown away to landfill, this only collects about 51 cents or 5.1 million containers per school day across its 4-year lifespan. And that hasn't actually changed too much as well. It's pretty consistent, the amount per month or so. My sort of hunch with this, or my hypothesis, was that students aren't willing to engage with it, because there's no incentive to do so. The money just goes back into the school's general account. And B, again, it's a kitchenette. That's not where they drink their drink containers. You know, they might drink it in the class or outside, so they're not going to feel too compelled to walk all the way inside and up the stairs to deposit their drink containers in there. The idea was to distribute the collection bins and incentivize the involvement in the initiative. And I did this by setting up a competition between each of the 10 big picture advisories, whereby we all competed, the advisories competed with one another to see who could collect the most drink containers over a designated period of time. And the incentive was that the winning advisory would get to choose within reason where the funds were put towards. So I began this by collecting cardboard boxes from the canteen that I set up like this and distributed to each advisory. And I removed the collection tub just temporarily. And before I get into the results, I will note amusingly that these collection boxes were boxes that cans of soft drink came to the canteen in, that, you know, the cans would later end up back in. So there may be a circular economy joke you could come up with there. So here is some photos from the initiative. Again, would you like to guess how long it took us to accumulate this many containers right here? Anyone? A week? That is just from one of the days. One of the days was that many containers. This is me doing my rounds, collecting containers from the classrooms. So it ended up being successful. In just 3 weeks, we were able to raise $110.40, compared to the estimation that in 10 weeks we'd raise $100. So it's about 3.3 times better. Here you can see the leaderboard that I had set up just in the hallway, depicting the hierarchy of which advisories were winning. And my plan following this successful initiative was to work out, of course, with the winning advisory where to put the money, which we eventually did. We bought a lemon tree called Loretta, which we planted in the garden, and some saws. I wanted to find interest for a Quench for Cash 2 electric boogaloo to be run, because what you really want to do is you want to entrench this in the school system. And as part of that, I created a Quench for Cash blueprint for future iterations, and I planned to speak to administrative staff to work out if there was some way that the funds from this existing initiative, which could kind of morph into entrenched version of my initiative, if the funds from that could go to student-determined causes, if students could come forth and say, hey, can I pitch this for the money to be used for? Unfortunately, out of these things, I've only done these two, worked out where the money went and created the blueprint. And after sharing this blueprint with a few students, none have just yet come forward with plans to run their own version of a similar competition or whatever they choose to do, but I will leave that around after I go with the hopes that someone will come forward and see the value in that. So moving forward, the scene was now set for a scrap collection system, and so I began by repurposing a caddy, a Fogo caddy, into a Green Entrepreneur's compost bin that listed, please feed the worms fruit, bread, tea bags, etc. Don't feed us citrus, junk food. So it was a bit pedantic, but I set it up in the big picture kitchenette again. And to date, it has only collected a tea bag and a banana peel. And my theory as to why that is links back in with the container collection tub in the kitchenette, which is that it's a fridge, it's an inlet with a fridge, a sink, and a microwave. Students aren't eating their lunch there, they're just refrigerating it and heating it up. So what you really need is distributed collection bins where students are actually eating their lunch. I will also note that I began composting some of the garden scraps. In this compost I made a 3D printed this piece to make it a stacked compost, but I won't get too much into that. But my next iteration, I was advised by Aaron to acquire wheelie bins from Rebonders, the recycling company, or the bin company, to convert into compost. And in my correspondence, I'd asked for used wheelie bins, but to our surprise, they actually ended up being brand new wheelie bins, which are surprisingly valued at $150 each. So that was very generous of them. And whilst it may not be less, may be less sustainable in terms of reuse, reduce, recycle, it does remove any issue of us acquiring used wheelie bins that may be contaminated with X, Y, Z. So what came next was, well, first, they make great compost because they're transportable due to these wheels. They're a tower, they don't take up much floor space, and they're rat proof. So we use a really simple method. We drill holes in the bottom, we add sticks to the floor, and we add some layers of cardboard at the top of that. And what this does is it creates a false floor and allows for the worm juice to drain through, because as you can imagine, worms don't particularly like swimming around in their own urine. So now I had a good compost, and the plan now is to actually get food scraps collected. So I converted another one of these pails into a food scrap collection bin. And as per Aaron's advice, I reduced the barrier to entry. Instead of saying, please feed us X, Y, Z, don't feed us X, Y, Z, I just said food scraps, food scraps. And this way it is inclusive, it is not pedantic, and again, it reduces the barrier to entry. It allows anyone to participate. Unfortunately, the message may not have been too clear because I got straws, muesli bar wrappers. I did get a few, hot chips. And I was going, day to day, I'd check on this bin, I'd think, okay, yesterday when it was next to the seats, it only got a muesli bar wrapper. But today when I put it next to the mixed waste bin, I got a few hot chips, so perhaps that's the direction I should be heading in. But it was one day, a week after it had been residing there, that I checked on it to find that the gorgeous canteen staff had adopted it into their kitchen, as I'd already connected with them previously with the cardboard boxes. And it is now that we are collecting 2.5 kilograms of food scraps from the canteen daily. And if we go back to the finding of the audit, if the 30 kilograms thrown away, 15 kilograms is compostable, that is 1/6 of that. So you can actually see that kind of mapped around the school. You can imagine 1/6 of that is from the canteen kitchen. Maybe another 1/6 is from the hospitality kitchen. And then the remaining third or 2/3 or such is from students and staff's food, or perhaps a third of it is paper towels and such. But you can actually really see that data actually mapped physically around the school, at least that slice. So we're now taking 1/6 of that and composting it in the garden. And again, what we're trying to do is build up layers of healthy soil. We're trying to put nutrients into the ground, and that's what, instead of saying this is the landfill, we're now taking this and providing the garden with nutrients and building up healthy layers of soil. So alongside all of this, I of course distributed the survey once, and then it was advised to me by Mum that I should distribute it once per term for the 4 terms. So I did that, And I initially, I will just also mention that it was a mix of both Likert scaled questions, as in rate your feelings from 1 to 5, and written answer questions. Initially, I couldn't really gauge too much. I was just kind of experimenting with the data, trying to find what's kind of happening there. And what I noticed is between the first round, distributed a week or so after the audit, and the second round distributed a week or so after Quench for Cash, which was a highly collaborative kind of initiative. I saw, you can see that the awareness of waste management, this blue line, and familiarity with waste composition, this red line, went up. And feelings of personal responsibility and feelings or opinion of how important it is to fix our waste management, the importance actually went up. I'm not sure why that is, but oh no, that's the green line. Yeah, those two, feelings of personal responsibility and feelings of how important it was, actually went down. So I have a hunch that what this is students feeling like they've done something positive for the environment, and rather than the pessimism that the literature shows amongst students, they were now actually feeling optimistic. They felt like they could actually make a difference. That's perhaps why that number went down, and they also were now more familiar with the waste management, so you can see that move up. So I think that's potentially the case, but it of course hasn't fluctuated too much, so I have to keep working on that. What else that was really interesting that you can really see in the survey responses is that Year 12 students, so we'll look at the blue and red columns, Year 12 students show a higher awareness and familiarity with waste composition than Year 11 and 9 students. You can see it's right up here compared to here amongst Year 12s. And their feelings of personal responsibility, and again, it should be the green column, how important they believe fixing waste management is. Look how it's kind of gone up. So what I think this shows. In Aaron's work, he has the living classroom practices a kids teaching kids model through a sort of guardian ambassador program, where as students progress through the school years, they later on teach the younger students, and it's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle, and it really embeds longevity into the system. And I think what this may show is really strong evidence that students who've maybe been here 1, 2, possibly 3 years are more confident in their familiarity and such of the waste management, and can therefore teach the younger students or the newer student generations. Does anyone have any thoughts regarding that? No? Okay. So yeah, that was what I've gotten so far from the Likert scale survey. And then I have now been working on my thesis.
Excuse me, Asha, I do have just something that I was reflecting on. I was wondering if, as people in Year 12 and they're feeling like they're finally separating from, this space, there is an imperative to take responsibility for one's actions when you leave, because we're often cloistered in schools, and when you go out into the world, it's up to those individual people, particularly if you're going to, people are older and they're having families or they're in those independent positions. I'm just curious. It's, like if we're spoon feeding somebody, it's now time to.
And that's kind of what Big Picture aims to do, and this was a survey of the Big Picture cohort, so there may be some merit to that. It is also hard to tell with this data, like there is a bit of speculation and interpretation on the researcher's behalf, and you do kind of have to make the point for why you believe your opinion or your analysis of the data is kind of makes sense with the backdrop of existing literature and what that says. So we'll have to do some kind of analysis, but I really haven't gone too far into the Likert scaled survey questions just yet, but should be roughly that.
I think another reason could also be that you've done a good job educating your peers in year 12, because they know your work and what you're working on, and they want to just spew data that way.
Yeah. And maybe that's your peers as well, like this class is a senior class, your peers, senior students who you spend time with, excursions with.
Part of this is it's hard to actually believe that the data is real and that it's not just random. But I guess the more data you collect, the more confirms parts of it. And part of what you're saying there kind of ties into what I'm calling my observational findings, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm incorporating my own personal experiences into my thesis writing. So I am, what it sort of is, this kind of research is action research. It's research through doing, and I'm the kind of driver of that research, and as I go along and do that, I collect data. And as part of that, it's not just quantitative, qualitative, the surveys, the audit, it's also my observational findings, my own personal experience. And whilst that may not be empirical in the sense that it has biases in it, it does provide a useful perspective that can then be kind of further proven or disproven by other perspectives taken on similar sort of research. And it is also a year 12 school project, not an honours thesis or a PhD, so no one's expected it to be too empirical. But one of my recommendations in my thesis is for future research in this area to take a detached vantage point. So rather than the driver of the initiative collecting the data and driving the initiative, it could perhaps be a researcher who identifies people, you know, doing stuff similar to what I've done in this project, and then decide, okay, on a weekly basis, I'm going to meet these 3 people at 3 schools running 3 initiatives, and I'm going to ask them how their initiatives are going and gather their kind of observational findings, and purposefully not kind of tamper with what they're saying, not put their own input in, but just, you know, kind of gather those kind of initiative drivers' thoughts. Is one way you might gather to, I can't remember what the term is, but cross something or other, kind of, but yeah. So my thesis, the title I'm currently working with is Student-Centered Learning as a Cultivator of Student-Led Action for Sustainability. So student-centered learning is essentially learning that doesn't place the teacher at the center, but it places the student at the center. So think Montessori, Steiner, Big Picture, and Permaculture Garden. And in these learning environments, students are able to pursue their own interests rather than being spoon-fed the same curriculum as everybody else that doesn't take into account individuality. So both my research, I guess you could say, and existing literature that I've reviewed in my thesis shows strong evidence for the current generation of secondary schoolers as being strongly interested in the environment. And then the kind of 2 propositions I make is that student-centered learning allow these interested students to further pursue this interest, and amongst them, and this sort of comes into kind of social behaviour theory that I'm trying to work into it, is that amongst them, a few have the potential to adopt positions of leadership and drive collective action amongst their peers. So the sections are an introduction, of course. It kind of proposes the value of my research. And the kind of proposition of value is that whilst, you know, my biases may unintentionally be incorporated in there, if you look at it from an academic perspective, it's still you know, a lot of this kind of research has biases involved. And it's offering the unique observational findings from the person driving the action. Then is a literature review. In the area of, well, my sort of scope is literature pertaining to education for sustainability in Australian secondary schools. And I don't know if I maybe messed up something with how I searched the literature. I'm not sure, but it seems like I'm not sure. It seems like there's just not that much literature on that, especially in secondary schools. There seems to be a strong focus on education for sustainability in primary schools, and that's kind of demonstrated by the Sustainable Schools Initiative, which doesn't really run in secondary schools, but does run in primary schools. And what the literature review does, it provides context for my own primary findings. So then is a methodology, which explains how I collected the data. My finding section, where I present my findings. And it's currently quite a long finding section that I'm trying to make as neat and organized and rigorous as possible. And then there's a discussion where I interpret the findings and compare with existing literature. And I finally conclude by answering the research question. And it's not like yes or no, this is true. It's more like, to what degree is this true? To what degree is it not true? What further research may need to be done to further prove or disprove aspects of this. So it's that kind of deeper analysis into things. I'm also sort of going to recommend that schools offer student-centered learning opportunities to allow for Section 2, and also offer the resources, you know, the mentors, the equipment, spaces necessary for students to engage with sustainability and pursue positions of leadership, which kind of ties into number 3. So now we'll be moving on to Section 2. Before we do that, would anyone like to sort of ask any questions, or because some of the feedback I got in my dress rehearsal was that it was a bit jarring how I jumped between the two kind of sections. So part of big picture, and you know, the whole student-centered learning is that you know, the motto is it's something like an individual in a community of learners, I think it is. So they also get you to kind of speak about your personal learning journey. So part of that is through Outlearning, which you kind of report on, an autobiography task in Year 12, and a Leaving School project, which is again where you kind of explain what avenues you want to take post-school and kind of justify why you're choosing these avenues. So I've clustered these items together. So 2 years ago, I participated in Zigzag Hub's Young Eyes Festival of Innovation, and at this point in time, I was quite discombobulated, and I wasn't too engaged with learning, but I just kind of followed this path, and where it kind of led me is where I am now. It was kind of the catalyst that got me to be interested and engaged and kind of positively change myself. So following this, I continued kind of meeting with Zigzag Hub, and our boss, Carmen, eventually offered me a job. Well, I do have to explain, Zigzag Hub is a co-working space. Alongside that, we sort of provide opportunities for young people to pursue their interest in business and programming and that sort of area. So we do that through online courses and our Young Guys Festival of Innovation. So here you can see Andre and I in front of the Zigzag Hub logo. So our boss Carmen offered me a job reviewing our online courses. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So I worked quite hard at kind of nitpicking what sort of details to kind of put in my write-up. And Andre and Carmen were quite pleased with that. So they got me to implement that feedback. And this, you know, it was 3 hours every Friday for a few weeks. And I began building courses from scratch, which included, well, my first one was a course focused on the Lean Startup model, which I won't ramble about again because I've rambled about it a lot. And I then built an Intro to JavaScript course and a course focused on building the snake game, which is where you have the snake chasing the apples. And I sort of did that in a self-directed model because I sort of thought, well, apparently, I'll just check the time real quick.
No, good.
Yeah. I sort of thought it's not too hard to understand that in programming, you're kind of manipulating data. Like you can look at like, you know, x equals 4, you know, whilst y equals true plus x, etc. You can look at that and think, okay, like that makes sense. But then how do you kind of turn that into a video game or something? So what I kind of thought was maybe what is needed is a bit of an explanation on how these parts go together. But you don't just want to walk someone through it, you actually want them to kind of work it out for themselves, because that's a big part of learning. And especially with programming, you've got to kind of use the internet to seek the answers for yourself. So what it is it's a course that provides pseudocode examples and kind of leads you through, well, here you have to create an object for the snake, and here you have to create a function that will continuously delete the tail and add a new element in front of the head in the direction that the snake's heading. Then when it eats an apple, you add 5 more pieces. And it's kind of providing the different snippets, but it's pseudocode. It's not actually real code. You can't run it in any language. It's just, and it kind of prompts the user. It'll go, you know, const snake equals blah, 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 x equals question mark. Well, of course, it's not going to equal question mark. You have to work out what it's going to, and then I've got under each kind of like subsection, there's also a few articles linked so that the user can kind of work out, can kind of use those resources to, am I boring everyone? No? Okay. And then for the last few months, my kind of primary duty has been working with Andre as a junior software developer on our online learning platform, which is the type of software sometimes referred to as a LMS, a learning management system. And whilst I do have some previous experience and know-how of programming, a lot of what this position is, or this opportunity, is learning on the job type of work. And the toolkit we mainly use is TypeScript, which is, it's fun to say this, it's a statically typed superset of JavaScript, which you've probably heard of, Python, which you may have also heard of, and React, which is, I forget what term we use for that, but it pretty much, you've heard of JavaScript and HTML. Those are the main kind of languages for a website. It combines them into one, so you can create kind of modular and reactive websites. So that's where you go from building, like, I guess you could say like a Wikipedia type website, to maybe a website more like Google Docs or something that actually has some real functionality. So here's a photo taken from our online learning platform. So here you can see the Intro to JavaScript course and the Future Founders course, which is currently our 2 flagship courses. And you can also see the thumbnail for the Snake Game course. So this is a link, so if we have time and we're interested, I can log in and show you guys the platform. But I'll just continue on for now. there's also my autobiography. So I titled it Lost in the Sauce. Sauce spelled like tomato sauce. And it was recommended to me that I should base it off of the hero's journey story structure, sometimes referred to as the monomyth. So I didn't finish it. It's a really long, wordy book, but I read about a third of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces and did some other research into it. And what it kind of is, if you haven't heard, is the idea, which you probably have heard this, but that Luke Skywalker, Katniss Everdeen, Harry Potter, and Jesus are all incarnations of the same character. It kind of provides, what it really is a journey into the unknown, following the hero as they overcome challenges and return with some greater knowledge or something beyond what they had when they ventured off on the journey. And accompanying them throughout the journey is a mentor. There's other fun characters like the Herald, who, you know, will say, here, come along on this journey, and the hero may refuse it, they may be refused it, they may, for whatever reason, want to or not want to. It differs between stories, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. But this author, and quite a famous comparative mythologist, they call him, has sort of compiled this into the sort of stages that tend to happen in these famous journeys. And what my story is, I won't spoil it too much, but it's a tale of self-improvement and reconciliation with my past self. And there are some Easter eggs hidden within. Like this line here is actually a reference to when I was in a play like 6 or 7 years ago. The person and I who were on stage, we forgot the medal, so she went off to get the medal. I said, sorry everyone, we've experienced some technical difficulties. They thought that was quite amusing, so that came to mind. And then there's also my leaving school project, which I won't get into too much, but I decided that UTS was the ideal uni choice for me because I don't want to go to UOW because I kind of find Wollongong a little bit boring. And I think UTS is close enough and it's close enough and it's easy enough to travel to, accessible enough that I can commute there in the long term, but also far enough away that I could justify to myself moving in the long term. And after going to the open day, I solidified my belief that engineering would be the ideal faculty for me to want to study in. And alongside that, I'm going to double it up with this double degree option they call the Bachelor of Creative Intelligence and Innovation, which I thought just sounded like nonsense. But after actually speaking to students who are doing that course, it actually sounds pretty cool. And then, of course, I'd like to continue working at Zigzag Hub. I'm currently working 1 day a week, but there has been some talk of potentially putting me on for 2 days a week. And that will primarily continue to be focused on software development with some work with the courses. Then there's general life. I want to get my P's because I've basically got the hours and I've been on my L's long enough. I'm just not a particularly great driver, to be honest. And I want to kind of pick up an exercise regime. And I've got some ideas for some projects, one of which is Shred Mount, which I've brought my sketches on if you're interested in seeing. And then there's of course my digital portfolio, and I am also supposed to talk about my video profile, but I don't know what else to say about that except I sort of just looked at some of the other video profiles that, you know, they use as examples. This one's quite good, this one's quite good. I kind of just noted down what they've kind of done. They always kind of have a, you know, I wasn't doing great, and then big picture. And then, you know, these are my project, these are my achievements, this is what I want to do. Plus, these are my interests. So I kind of just followed that formula. And I've edited that. It's 5 minutes long. And I'm just waiting for Nate, the SLO, to finish boosting the audio. So yeah, and of course my digital portfolio, which I can show you if you're interested. But I think most of you have already seen it. So
Can you link to that
sure.
video?
would you like me to show you now?
And did you want me to hand out your biographies? Are you going to do that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What happens now?
This is the Department of Education for you.
You know why that is. You don't have an SSL certificate attached to your domain. A certificate used to encrypt and decrypt the data between the web browser and the server. See how it says not secure in the corner? It's actually.com.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So what
It
happened?
is interesting. Good to know.
So you can't show a session?
Well, I can show you on my laptop.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, you can't.
So I've used Google Sites to create this. And Google Sites requires you to use the subdomain www. On top of your domain, which you purchase elsewhere. And I found this annoying because then it meant, just because of the universe, that I had a separate website at www.xyz and just ashtonrebel.com. So I just kind of argued with the domain company until they set up URL forwarding between the two sites.
Good on you. So you're going to put it on that table or something?
Well, what I'll actually show you is the unpublished version, because I have got unpublished changes currently. So I'll just show you a preview of that. So I'm going to put my video profile here.
Put it on the table.
Yeah, so we can
Oh,
see
oh,
that.
you can't see it.
No.
So it's just, hey, thanks for stopping by. Here's me.
Yeah,
I'm going to put my video profile here when I'm finished with it. So I'll upload that to YouTube.
Yep.
And then I've got
Oh,
a
yes,
video
videos.
of waste audit.
Yep.
I've got my head talk. I've got a video of my
Oh,
finger skate park, and this video of me on the news, which I might replace with this exhibition. And
What were
then
you on the news for?
for the robotics. And then here's Loretta, our lemon tree.
Yeah. She's looking lovely. Oh, and then, yep,
Here's the
environmental,
thing.
young environmentalist.
Hey.
Yep,
Yeah,
Kashmir.
here's the brewery.
Yeah. No,
And
look,
then
that was New Zealand.
this is my unpublished autobiography page.
Oh, wow.
So I've got some photos of it. did a while ago.
Oh, wow.
On the story structure. And I've kind of said, try and see if you can identify the underlying story structure to read my memoir. If not, then refer to the diagram/brainstorm below, which they can collapse or uncollapse as they wish. And then it's a PDF of it, so people can read it. And then outlining, I haven't really fleshed out yet. I've got a general page that has a few things. I don't know how I feel about having all these here, but I have a lot of these. I can't lie.
Good.
That's good.
And I've done the permaculture page, but I'm not sure what to do for the zigzag hub page just yet. But I haven't put it in just yet, but I was going to put that permaculture homework in, where I did that thing to do with the Richard Scarries. I don't know why, but I couldn't find a high resolution photocopy of this page. I just got a bit of info on the Guardian, and I just did that. And I've got info on Quench for cash. And then my senior project page is basically just placeholders for the moment, so I've just copied and pasted the same text. I haven't quite fleshed that out just yet. And then my senior thesis, I haven't quite fleshed out either. But one of the unpublished changes I had, that I don't know if I should publish or not, is a note to my university application reviewers. And I've just done some maths to kind of just outline that I will be teaching myself some of the A to C advanced maths concepts and why it's perhaps less good than actually studying the class for 2 years, but better than studying it in a bridging course for 5 days. As well as hopefully doing the bridging course. But luckily, one of the reasons I'm thinking about UTS is they don't have any prerequisites on their courses. So unlike UOW, etc., they could actually let me in for engineering as per their rules and regulations. And I've got an Adventure Time gift. Yeah, and then I've also got an about page where it's a bit like a CV. So I have put work experience as mushroom cultivator at Flame Tree Co-op.
Yay. What's it called again?
Fun guy,
Fun Guy, that's right.
as in fun guy.
He's such a good.
So yeah,
Excellent.
that's what I've got so far.
Yay.
And so we've still got 20 minutes.
You have an hour to present. It's an hour and 3.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to ask me questions, or would you want to see my video profile?
It's up to you. It's up to everybody here.
Can we clap?
I've got 5 minutes here.
Yep.
Can we give feedback, discussion, whatever?
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
I mean, obviously